I was working as an armed guard at Safeway in San Leandro, just doing my job, regular security guard, when two people were stabbed outside my work. When I stepped outside, I seen the first individual. He was laying on the ground, and he had his shirt up, and he had an evisceration, and his intestines were hanging out. And sadly, there was nothing I could do. I watched him take his last breaths in front of a group of people, and no one was helping him. And then there was a second gentleman who was standing on the side, and I couldn't tell he was injured. He was wearing a raincoat, so it was holding all the blood in. And as he was walking towards me, he was saying, "Help, help," and I didn't realize he was injured because all the blood was inside of his raincoat. And so as he got closer, there was a white car, and he put his hand on the car, and he fell back. And when he fell back, all the blood started leaking out of him, and that's when I realized that I had a second patient. So I ran over to him, and I started going through March, which I teach in my class. It's the standard that is taught through TCCC. And so I seen massive hemorrhaging from his right arm. And so as I went to put my tourniquet onto his arm, I slid it underneath, and my hand went inside of his body because he'd been cut so bad from here to here that it was just a giant flap, and it actually cut his brachial artery that runs along the inside of your arm. And so his arterial bleeds were just shooting blood. He's losing cups every heartbeat. I ran to my car. I always carry hemostatic agents. I carry a little IFAC, the individual first aid kit. I grab my material and I run back to the patient. And as I'm sitting there trying to get the clothes off him, there's groups of people videotaping me and taking pictures. And I asked them for help, and they refused. They said, "Hey, I don't want to do this." And one of them actually said, "No, man, I'm just filming." And that really struck me is, these people aren't going to help you. And I want to give people the tools so that if they're ever caught in one of these situations, they can save somebody's life. Because if I wasn't there, this gentleman wouldn't have made it. And so I continued to try and strip him because I realized that no one's going to help me. So I pulled his clothes off him, and I seen how big his wound was, and it was an arterial bleed. So I started taking packets of the hemostatic agent. It comes in a compressed Z-fold, and I opened the package, and I put it in my shirt, and I started feeding and just packing his wound. So basically, I had to sweep the blood out and find the bleeder, and then I packed 3 packages, which is 36 feet inside of his wound. And I had no more material, so I just held on and I prayed. And I said, I did everything I could for him, and I was telling him, "Hey man, stay with me, fight, think about your family." And I was trying to encourage him to stay, to fight. He's gonna fight till death. Everything, at that moment, you have to keep that person alive. You have to keep that person in the fight and make him realize how important his life is. And so I was telling him, "Hey, think about your family, come on, stay with me, talk to me. And the last thing he said to me is, "I'm fucking dying." And he went unconscious, and he started snoring. I thought he was gonna pass away in my arms. And so I just held pressure, and a police officer came. And when he came, the gentleman also had been cut open so bad along his ribs. The blade rode his rib cage, and his rib was sticking out of his body, and he had been stabbed maybe like 5 or 6 times in the trap. And so the police officer came, and he started packing the chest wound, and that's a huge no-no. You don't ever do that. And so I was telling him, I was like, "Hey, don't do that." And at first he was kind of adverse to listening to my advice, and then I explained I was a medic in the military, and I assumed that he served because his attitude changed directly. He opened up all this shit, he put it on the ground, and I started grabbing chest hyphens, and I was able to actually treat this chest wound, and we started both working on his trap. And so I just maintained pressure on that wound until the paramedics came. And I actually got to meet one of the paramedics that worked on him and some of the firemen, and they said that without my intervention he would have bled out, because he bled out about 2 liters, almost half the blood volume in his body. And so that's why I want to give you the tools to do the same thing.